Hey, welcome back to Riders of Silicon Valley. My name's Patrick Stafford. I'm your host. Welcome back to old listeners. Welcome to new listeners. I'm not going to keep you long. You know I hate these intros. I never know what to say. And they're super awkward. So you'll have to forgive me as well. I've done a workshop today and my voice is shot. So I am going to keep this short, not just for your sake, but for mine. Thank you to everyone who's been listening to the new episodes so far this year. I think there's been a big amount of attention on the Writing for AI Agents episode with Chris Greer. If you haven't listened to that one, check it out. This episode, though, I think is really special. I don't get to talk to a lot of poets, and it's something that I often see as out of my grasp. But today I'm speaking to someone who I think is possibly the most interesting person in content design right now. His name is Adedayo Agarau, and he is an award-winning poet, born in Nigeria, moved to the United States, was awarded a fellowship to Stanford, and has a variety of awards for his poetry. He's also a content designer, and he has worked on AI tools, including Grok, which is used by what is now X, was Twitter, and a variety of other tools as well. His approach to content design right now, I think, is really unique, and he's been doing a great job on LinkedIn sharing all the stuff that he's learning and talking about. Today, this conversation goes in a variety of directions. One of the things that he said that stuck with me is that content is data, yes, but data is now becoming content, and content designers have a job to do there. And I've been thinking about it a lot ever since we chatted. I think this is just a fascinating conversation. I'm not going to delay any longer, so let's get into it. As always, if you would like, you can head over to uxcontent.com and get 20% off there with the code podcast20. But without further ado, here's my conversation with Adedayo Agarau. I hope you enjoy it. So every so often, I get someone on the podcast who, well, look, everyone who comes on here is very accomplished at what they do, and is very good and talented. Every so often, I get someone on who is a little bit intimidating, and so when I wanted to get you on the podcast, I've seen your work on LinkedIn. I've seen the blog posts that you've done, and I sort of looked into you, and I found out that you are not just a content designer who is working a lot with AI, not just someone who's worked at some very cool places, including Google. You are an accomplished poet, and you have received a number of awards for your poetry. You are, or currently are, or maybe previously were, a fellow at Stanford University. And I have to say, I'm sitting here like very intimidated because you've won all of these amazing awards for your work. So you, I think it's really cool, I think, to see someone who is working in content design, particularly with the stuff that you're talking about with AI and everything, but you also have this background and this root in the power that words have, and are clearly acknowledged for it. So you live a very exciting life.
I thank you so much, Patrick. I think that when you asked me to come on this podcast, I was like, oh my God, Patrick Stafford asked me to come. And then I told my friends, and I was like, should I run? Should I run away? And they're like, you dare not run. So I'm like really grateful. I respect the work that you do, and I have been like a long time reader of your thoughts. So I'm like really grateful that you asked me to join, to come on. But I think that I don't know. I just exist in multiple nodes. Luckily for me, that I am able to like write poetry, which is like my first the first thing I ever discovered I could do.
Mhm.
I figured out that I could write, or at least a couple of people actually read something that I wrote, and they're like, "You should do this again."
Hmm.
And I could not stop doing it. Since then, since it made me feel like I have something to say, and
Yeah.
then that feeling actually became true. And then I discovered that I indeed have something to say.
Hmm.
And I'm grateful that I have been saying the things that I had to say for a while. And yeah, that has been going great so far.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah,
Seems to be
that's it.
working. So you grew up
Yeah,
in
it seems.
Nigeria, and you
Yep.
obviously discovered fairly young that you have a knack for poetry. How did that come about? How did you discover that you have that sort of talent?
Oh, so I didn't discover well, maybe relatively young, but the regular route for people who finally write, who are writers, or who are creative writers, or who are like poets, is that they have been writing since they're like a kid, and then their parents I mistakenly found literature. I was a science student. I have my first degree was in nutrition and dietetics, so I
Mhm.
was working as a nutritionist. I worked as uh, an intern dietitian at a state hospital in Nigeria. But before that, in 2013, it was in 2012, I found myself on a small app on our Symbian phones back in the day, and the app is called Tugo. This Tugo app actually has several rooms, so it's like a forum, right? But it has several rooms. So at night, like people would actually just come into that room. There are dating rooms, there are like literature rooms, there are poetry rooms. But there's this room that I actually just always find myself. They just everybody just talks in. I mean, supposedly poetic language, Victorian English. Some would say they're writing haikus, and then there are this small number of people who actually just use very natural languages and language that are like related to the cosmology, stars, moon. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And then I chatted somebody up, and I was like, so what is that thing that you do? Now, this was like in late 2012 slash late 2011 slash 2012, and the person was like, oh, yeah, it's poetry. I write poetry and I should check him out on Google. So I Googled him. I realized that he's actually a poet. I started following him on Facebook. And because of him, I found some other communities and I joined. And I asked the owner of the community that, I want to write poetry. Can you mentor me? And it was like, yeah, sure. So you should write now. I'm like, wait, what? You should just go write? Is that it? So yeah, luckily for me, I wrote a poem, he edited it, and then he platformed the poem, and that was how I became a poet. Like it was like, oh, you have a natural talent for poetry, but that was a mistake. I'm probably not
Mm.
supposed to be a poet, or maybe I've actually like always supposed to be a poet. I just never really found that enabling environment for me to express.
Mm.
My education wasn't routed in that direction, among other things. So yeah, so that's how I started writing.
I think it's really nice that you were able to find that sort of calling through technology. It's kind of the perfect
Mhm.
metaphor, the perfect example of what content design is.
Right,
It's the connection of the
right,
human experience and machines. So
right.
I think it's fantastic. I've tried writing
Yeah.
poetry. I can appreciate poetry, and I've tried
Right.
it before. I don't think I'm built for that type of expression, but I
Yeah.
it's amazing the power that good poetry can have, and especially because I think there's so much bad poetry. It's when you find
Yeah.
good stuff, it's fantastic. And clearly, this has taken you on a huge journey because you have taught at Stanford University. You were a fellow there. You've won a bunch of awards, so you've clearly been clearly you. I don't think it was a mistake that you landed on that.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's a mistake anymore, but in 2013, writing my terrible poems and having people like, on Facebook, it was huge on Facebook.
Hmm.
And having people like, oh my God, it just made me feel like, or made me come to realization that yeah, you never really know what's like, hiding in there. And thank you for helping me express what I've been looking to express for a long time about the relationship between the natural talent and then technology, which you
Mm,
just mentioned. I've always, tried to like, find that balance. But now that you've helped me, you've given a language for me. Now I'm going to think about it better, because I would imagine that many of the people who I currently write with right now were people who, I mean, Nigerians and African writers who I currently like, exist around, who I'm in community with, are people who I was writing with back then too. Back on Facebook, we were all writing poetry, and there had to be Facebook for that to happen,
mm,
and then there had to be like an experience that is usable for that to happen. There had to be like an experience, or like the Facebook app and the community and the usability of that entire like app and location and all of these things. Everything actually like just come together, and technology, which is an interesting thing, an interesting concept, just makes our life better, helps us connect with something inside us that we probably do not even know is lying there.
mm.
It's so beautiful. Yeah.
It's funny as you're speaking about this. The person who I'm reminded of is Ted Chiang.
Mhm.
So, for anyone listening who
Okay.
doesn't know, Ted Chiang is a science fiction author, and he writes short stories mostly. And he wrote the collection Stories of Your Life, which contains the short story of, I think it's called Story of Your Life, which became the movie Arrival. And he
Hmm.
is actually a technical writer, or was a technical writer, while he was doing all of this work. So it's funny because I think there's a lot of similarities, and you've got a foot in both of these worlds. So I'm really curious to
Yeah.
hear how you ended up becoming a content designer while you're also doing this type of creative writing work.
Yeah. So I as with many African writers, or writers who are like working in content or technical content or content design or UX writing today, we all started um, because we needed to find a way to make ends meet. And when I was in school, when I was actually like rounding off at the Federal Polytechnic Academy for my first degree in nutrition and dietetics, was when I started freelancing as a web content writer. So I was actually writing content for web. So like small businesses would reach out to me via Fiverr. Then I was like one of the leading freelancers on Fiverr, and I would actually like write content for them because of my creative writing experience. I'm able to like put both SEO and creativity on the same page, so that the content is usable. Like you can actually like help them draw users to their website, help them rank on, but also it's enjoyable for readers to actually like enjoy. And on the other side, I'm also helping them write, blog posts and um, content that users can that they can share, that users can actually read and then feel so. In the same vein, I'm also writing around the same time. I'm also writing email content before email marketing became email marketing, and then it went huge. I was writing narrative stories that actually like would actually like center the user and then out and their experience and all of this thing. So that was, and I think that's like the trajectory of UX writing and content design, right? It started with the idea that there's this web, and then there's a website, there's a business that needed to reach out to its user. But as at then, what people were having were landing pages like just websites, right? Oh, we have a business. So we just add those pages, and then we had not started thinking about the fact that this web thing can actually become an app, like before the web app experience.
Yep.
So now we are now writing towards, we just, and then as many of this as the scope began to change, I think the demand for a different kind of writing also started changing. And as at then, what I was already doing as a web content writer was like, UX writing in some way, but I had to, when I learned in 2016 slash 2017 of UX writing, because it wasn't arriving in Nigeria until much later. So 2016, 2017, when I started like hearing about it, I I started working with my friend who actually like is now one of the biggest tech writers in the world, I would argue. Adebayo Agarau, who actually like writes for Forbes and IMC and Fastcar and several other places. Um, I started working with him at Expolitos, and we were actually sort of like we created a very small agency. He created a very small agency where I am actually like the front facing writer, but he is actually like managing the business, where we're now helping companies both in Nigeria and elsewhere, create user experience through writing and all of these things. But I was also taking courses online then, because I needed to upskill, I needed to figure out all of these things. So luckily for me, when I finished my education in 2019, I joined Phoenix Browser as a content operator. So that was where I actually like got the hands-on experience in writing push notifications, specifically is push for gain. You needed to, it's a very wild job that we did when I was at Phoenix Browser, because the goal is that we needed to increase the user flow into the app. It's a browser, so, and the browser has many of this content that we needed people to come see. So how then do you like bring people into the app that is a browser? You have to make them come read the news. You have to make them come read, like, watch a video. So content curation, which is actually like in itself a different kind of user experience design. So content curation rather. So I just went from that, and then I joined ScaleX with my friend James, where I was actually helping write and build content for the first Nigeria's first crypto checkout, where they get crypto into their bank, but as their fiat. So like in 10 seconds, you can actually like move crypto from China, and then you get it in your bank directly. Like you check that into your banks, and it felt like an idea that actually was like ahead of its time. It was working well, but the business was like struck down by Nigerian regulations, among other things. So when I started my MFA at Iowa, I was still working at SkillX then, and then after my MFA was when I joined Google through Tech Mahindra, and I was actually like, that was my first front facing experience with AI, and it was really wild. The fact that usually when I'm getting hired, I'm either getting hired as somebody who is actually just coming to actually like work on the content and think about how we can design this, and then the scope begins to like expand and expand, and then you realize that what you're literally doing is AI content design. You're helping, and I'm usually very happy to actually like talk about the fact that one of the most incredible things that I did when I was at Google, that I contributed to, in fact probably led the team, was when I was at Tech Mahindra through Google through Tech Mahindra, so that I'm not like directly so was the way that we now search the web, the AI in search. The fact that I was actually like I was leading my team on data set curation, which is when I started thinking about context as a layer of content design. So web search, the way we are creating all of these knowledge bases, and then the way the responses are like delivered, the way you're like interfacing with engineering to actually like how and what you're supposed to like, what you're designing for, what you're designing with, and what is the response, among other things. So yeah, and then I landed at X after that, and now I'm currently looking forward to the next place that I
that, I mean, it's such a wild story, but it kind of resonates because a lot of content designers follow I wouldn't say a similar path, but the steps tend to echo in that you sort of don't know where you're going to end up, and then you start at a little place or wherever, and then you start sort of building from there. So that definitely resonates. But there's a lot to talk about there. before we get into talking about AI a little bit, I want to talk about
Right.
you went to Google, and until then you had been working at you had started, at a small agency, got into a bigger
Right.
company, working on a browser, and working like on crypto, and now you're at Google. And I think for people who like content designers, especially, but also software developers or
Mm-hmm.
anyone, landing a
Mm-hmm.
job at one of those massive companies can be both
Right.
life changing, also incredibly intimidating, because all of a sudden
Right.
you're in a massive company with hundreds of thousands of people. And I know a lot of people tend to feel a little bit of like imposter syndrome because they're like, what am I doing here? Should I even be here? Especially for people in content, because it's so tech heavy and you start thinking, am I equipped to do this? What was your reaction to working at a place like that and really trying to find your way in this new role?
Mm. So I was I was hired at Google through an agency.
Yeah.
I want to establish that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I worked at Google through an agency, but I think that at the time when I was actually like getting, and this is the most sincere, this is the most sincere narrative. The time that I got the job, I was literally just fresh out of my MFA program. I was heading to Stanford to start my Wallace Stegner Fellowship, which was like a life changing opportunity. But as at then, I no longer knew how to actually just go to school.
Hmm.
The way that I kind of like, find a balance is to go to school and to do creative writing, but also like, on the other side, I need to not let myself be the way I produce creative writing is by having a different life that does not seem like the only thing that I have to do is to actually write. There's a pressure
Yeah.
that is placed on production of creative writing that for especially for me, um, there's an expectation that I give myself that just makes me render me almost useless as a creative writer
Mm.
when the only thing that I'm supposed to be doing is to just create writing
You
or
got to
piece of
live a
writing.
life
I
so that then you can
I
go
I
and
have
write.
to like
Yeah.
yeah. So I need to like be able to like live a different life. I don't know how to actually just be sleep wake right.
Mm.
I am gonna probably yeah. So as at then, I knew that I was already headed towards Stanford. I knew that I'd let them know at Stanford that I do have a job that I have actually recently signed. But I also let them know at Tech Mahindra through Google that I have a job. So because of that, I wake up in the morning and I sign I sign in to work and I just get work done,
Mm.
knowing fully well that my evening is actually going to be for creative writing or
Mm.
studying or reading or preparing to teach. I try as much as possible to not, because when you start to think about it, you would realize that you realize that the shocking realization that, oh my god, this is where I work actually can cripple you to
Mm.
produce. It can hinder you from from actually doing your best work, because then subconsciously at the back of your mind you think of the skill rather than the minute thing you can actually contribute to this large body of water that is in front of you that you're wading through. The fact that you actually wake up every day and you're like contributing to something that is very fresh and exciting, AI, but you're also contributing to how users actually experience it
Yeah.
when it eventually sort of like goes live. I remember the day that the public showcase of the Google in search actually went live, and then I've forgotten his name now, but he was talking about it. It was actually like showcasing it, and I was watching it, and I remember one of my colleague, Colleen, who was one of my superior at Google through Tech Mahindra then, was saying, "Oh my God, are they? Yeah, weather is they are talking about the weather now." And I actually like worked on weather, particularly weather implicit and implicit queries and all of that. And I remember that I was actually just smiling behind my PC because we were literally working, we were at work, and I was smiling behind my PC watching it on YouTube, and I was like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah.
It didn't land that we might have actually like created or contributed to something that has revolutionized the way that we've actually been searching the web in
Yeah.
the past couple of years. Now technically, rather than actually going from link to link to link to link, you can actually just get like all of these many links. The most critical part of all, the truest, the best reference, aggregated for you in finely written sentences.
Hmm.
That way you save time, you save energy, you don't have to actually like look, you have multiple options, you have multi steps, among other things. So I think that working working at these giant places, or and having that lock at the back of your mind actually is causes a crippling effect in some way. But many years of actually receiving rejections for creative writing have actually like built me for this world. The fact that you get rejections upon rejections for your piece of writing would just make you almost like as hard as the back of a tree, and you're just like, I'm just gonna raw dog this, I'm just gonna get this shit done right now. I'm just gonna get work done. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think, yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, it's a healthy perspective. It's definitely easy to become overwhelmed. And I think it's actually a good segue into talking about AI, because I think a lot of content designers, no matter where they work, feel really overwhelmed right now because there's so much
Yeah,
happening, especially if you are on LinkedIn every day or you're on social media.
uh,
There's a new model,
uh-huh.
there's a new tool, there's a new this. Make software in
Yeah,
2 days. This is disrupted, and
yeah,
it
yeah,
can be
yeah,
so debilitating to see everything
right,
just streaming out and think, "Oh my god,
yeah,
I'm so behind." I'm curious,
right.
I think some of your writing has been really great about, not some of it, all of it has been really great about what's happening with content design at the minute. And I'm wondering,
Yeah.
do you feel overwhelmed by AI right now and what's happening with it?
Yeah, yeah. It would be incredibly untrue if I say no. I
Mm.
think that I started. I use X a lot as a.
Sure.
I'm probably a power user. I am always on X because that's how I stay connected with Nigeria
Yeah.
and
Oh
get
yeah.
all the bad news that's coming out of there. And but my feed is littered with, wow, shocking. This is the new model that you have to
This
use right now.
changes everything. Yeah.
This changes everything. If you're not using this, you're so behind. Oh, content design is dead now because of this model that just came out. Oh, this Kimi 2.5 actually just killed OpenAI.
Yeah.
The slop for, and it's not just because it's not, the slop is not the product. The slop is the influencer marketing. The slop
Mm.
is the need to actually like see something that actually goes viral because of the payment structure of X. So if you're on X and you're getting like, and your feed is like littered with all of these things, not everything is actually like great as it's been said to be, but there are people whose entire job on X is to amplify original thoughts,
Mm.
to rake in views. And the X algorithm is actually created in such a way. I was talking about this with a friend. The X algorithm is actually like, created to actually like, punch up. I reviewed the algorithm that was shared. So I realized that it's actually like, created to push up shock effect or shock
Sure.
value, or anything that actually like is able to, that sounds like the wow factor. So people have figured that out. Therefore, because the only thing that's like moving in the world right now is this product war, we need to calm down. We need to
Yeah.
take a
I
chill
think, yeah,
pill
we really need to calm
and
down. I
take it
think that's a
all
good
in. We need to
suggestion.
calm down. We need
Yeah.
to, but also I understand that it's actually like it's a it's to answer the question directly, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And as somebody who is also very interested in many of these products and the way that our lives, technically, our lives, and by our lives, I mean the way that we interface with products, because the future of products now is AI native, and that's true. technically. Every product now would actually come with it's AI at some point would eventually become the accessibility factor, the accessibility layer of products.
Mm,
It's already getting there where where somebody who actually like cannot see can actually interface with like say a dating app because technically they have actually like created the experience for them such that it tells them, it gives them like is able to like perfectly describe the face of the person that is actually like being seen right now.
mm,
And then they actually get a full body experience of an app that they probably are not able to like interface with before,
mm,
so knowing fully well that we're actually like heading there and several other like ideas that AI is going to like continue to like we at a time when everybody wants to build a product that actually like contributes to that future
yeah.
where every product is accessible. And so and all of this research, product discovery, product showcase, it's moving at a very fast pace. And for some reason, there's always money somewhere ready to actually like, just go into like, and I'm like, we need to like come together as a people and calm down. Let us sink in and understand one tool before we move to the next.
Yeah,
It's
and I
so
think it.
much.
I also think it has um, a really bad effect of making people too skeptical because
Yes.
the hype marketing that is happening all the time, as
Mhm.
you see on X or LinkedIn.
Oh God,
Naturally,
it's
people have a reaction to it, which is to say, "I don't want
right.
anything to do with that." Right, and
No, that
that's
yes,
and rightly so. Really, I think
yeah,
that though that does have a problem though because if you aren't engaging this tech, if you think back a few years ago, everyone was all about NFTs. NFTs, the
yes,
NFTs are going to change everything. And a few
right,
years before that, it was something else, and a few years before that, it was something else. This is not that. Like there are now software developers who are using AI to code everything they do every day. These tools are integrated with how things are built now. Now, as to how
yeah,
much that changes our economy or commerce, that's sort of up for debate.
yeah,
But these tools are now
right,
being used in practical ways every day, so they need to be reckoned
right,
with. And in order to be
right,
reckoned with, they need scaffolding and they need content people, frankly, to guide how they're
right,
working. And that's why I'm really interested to talk to you about your work at X because you worked on Grok, which is the AI tool
yeah,
at X.
yeah,
And I actually became aware of your work on this through a GitHub repository that you published of a
yeah,
large number of prompts that were either they were included in Grok or they were sort of inspired by your work at Grok.
yeah,
And I have actually used those as references in AI workshops to show people like these are
yeah.
what good examples of prompts look like. And
Thank you so
that's
much.
also thank you. Like I think anyone should go read them, and I'll link to them in the show notes. And
Yeah,
I think your writing as well, your blog posts have explored what does it mean to be a content designer right now? How can you work in this type
yeah,
of role? So,
right.
can you talk a little bit about, obviously talk about what you can, but are you able to talk a little bit about what you worked on with Grok and what was it like
Mhm.
exploring how to sort of infuse it with personality and tone and yeah, all that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah. I think that again, if you are somebody who and now it's actually like I'm glad. Thank you so much for letting me come because it then puts a voice to or a face to some of the ideas that I have regarding AI and content designers, and also helps me to actually state categorically that if you've ever been in a position where you're deciding that, oh, this word should not be here because it sounds less confident, then you're the perfect person to actually also design for AI. It's that simple because every decision that you make actually goes into it's like the definition of a computer, right? Garbage in, garbage out, giggle. And everything that goes into it it's that simple. It's that rudimental. The fact that you're able to feed something into a system, and system actually collects all of these things together, and then you tell it that, so this thing that I've fed you, this portion is what you use for this. This portion is what you use for this. This portion is what you use for this. And then it's able to figure that out as its own intelligence layer. Like, oh, this is what I should use for this. Then you've given it the ability to actually think. Therefore, when you then ask it, okay, so I told you, or I gave you all of these things, and then I told you this, and then you say, oh, so tell me about this. It then goes back into that large bottle of information, large information that you've given to it, and then says, okay, I was given this, I was given this. I will not use this because this doesn't relate to this. I will not use this because I have a constraint to actually think about this in this way. Therefore, this is what I should think about. So, uh, and then it comes back with an answer, and you realize that, oh, this thing is true, right? And that's like the basis of artificial intelligence, the ability to actually process large body of LLM rather, at ability to actually process large body of information, and then coupled with a an intelligence layer or RAG, or and then coming back out with an answer that is actually viable. So at X, I I was hired as a human data specialist, which means that we're going to be working on large bodies of information and data, among other things. And when we started, when I joined, I was immediately moved into the team where we're thinking about voice and tone for Grok, because Grok had an interesting voice when I joined. Um, uh, there's this joke that Grok actually always tell that scarred me, and it's the scarecrow joke. I can't remember it right now because I tried to immediately I heard it told me that joke so much, I blocked it out of my head. Like anytime anybody asks for a joke, Grok actually literally always reference that scarecrow joke, and I'm like, this is so dark. It's so dark because there's the word scar and crow, and then you're trying to scare me among other things, but it's supposed to be a joke. And then everybody else on the team actually it was our joke that if I ever see Grok tell me this cockroach joke again, I would close my laptop. But that is actually just one reference. As a time when X actually, which was an incredible thing that they needed to do then, when they hired large number of writers, content designers, and lumped us all into the human data team. Everyone is contributing to a product that needed to learn how to process information that it has access to large data set. But how does it process that was an engineering decision as at then. And then working, with them, I began to realize that maybe it's not just an engineering decision because of this, because the fact that engineering would actually design the structure of or and the mathematical components of the way that LLM actually think. But how are we thinking about the information that we actually even feeding it? If it has access to all of the data sets in the world, how does it know that this is what it should pull from? When how does it know that this is when it's been asked about sports, it should not pull from a data that is actually referencing politics, even if the reference is the references actually have the same name but different personality. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So we 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 were we were in the sheets. By sheets I mean Excel, creating original content, uh and using that to actually train the model. We were also working with external what's it called external AI trainers who create data sets that we then QA. And I think that the same way we do workshops and sprints in content design teams is the same way we are sort of like also workshopping the data sets that we have, the responses that we're getting from the system. I actually wrote about I wrote about how not I it was I have not shared it, but during an interview that I did recently, I was sharing how the system, how the the quality is actually sort of like designed, or how I think of the quality design when you're like thinking of how AI actually sort of like processes and information, and that is technically what you do. And then away from all of that, you're also like thinking of personality. So how then do you like define the personality, what's it called, uh I've forgotten the word now, but uh the personality scale. What is the personality scale? What is the how do you determine what should be uh its confidence level? What should it do when it's actually not very confident
Mm-hmm.
regarding like a certain prompt? How should it like should it escalate to you or hand off to the human back, or ask clarifying questions, or is it confident enough to actually try and answer the question? And these are ways in which we sort of like figure out the solution for hallucination.
Mm.
If it has not lost its context or its access to the data that we've given it, then it should still be able to like think, oh, maybe I can answer this, maybe I can do this. But away from that, how then is it producing that answer, in whose voice,
Mm.
in what tone? So I've seen a lot of ways in which Grok has been used on X. There's this. I remember one of my favorite reference for Grok is in 2003. I mean, sorry, 2023 slash early 2024. Somebody asked Grok to actually like tell it how to make cocaine on
Okay.
X. And yeah, and Grok was like, okay, yeah, sure, let's do this. And then it goes very comical, but it was actually like, hinting at references, and and at the end, he had already like provided, and then at the end he was like, oh, just kidding, I can't do this. And I'm like, technically, it's a design problem. If you see this request and you even attempted it at all,
Yeah.
do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, there are multiple layers with which we can actually sort of like, I'm trying to not say, I'm trying to like give a general idea of some of the things that we worked on without getting into the specifics.
No, I
There are
totally
multiple
understand.
ways with which we can actually like think about designing for large like LLMs and AI systems, and the way that they actually even reason
Mm.
is one of those ways. I was writing recently about the way AI actually like reason, and I was citing like three major kinds of AI reasoning. I was talking about the react, the reasoning and act. I was talking about the plan, execute, where uh, now this is like moving into the agent frontier, where the agent is planning and executing, which interestingly is now made to be a user decision.
Mm.
uh Now it's you, the user, who's like deciding what level of reasoning. Because if you use Claude, or if you use OpenAI has its model and say this is the thinking model. If you're using like Claude Code would say, do you want to like be in plan mode now?
Yeah.
If you're using anti gravity would say, oh, plan first, or blah 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 blah. If you're using Gemini also has like you can ask it to actually like plan first. So, and that is what I was talking about when I was writing about the way that we hand off to users. So
Yeah.
the experience would eventually become very collaborative,
Yeah.
and it's a design decision that we must make. That this is how what's it called, the LLM should behave in this case. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
my answer was long-winded.
Oh, please don't be sorry. I talk too much on this podcast. The more that you talk is the
Yeah,
better. But I think like what's
yeah.
striking me as you're saying this, like you said a few times there that it's a design decision. I think
Mhm.
one thing that I'm really encouraged by and I know I've repeated it, I'm going to repeat it again, is the fact that companies like XAI, Anthropic, OpenAI are hiring content designers because all of the touch points where the user actually has to interact with these tools, they are design decisions. It can't just be done
Right.
by anyone. So I'm thinking specifically of in Claude, for instance, when you
Right.
return, it'll give you funny messages like Patrick returns
Right.
or good morning Patrick or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
In Claude
Right.
code, the little words that it says when it's
Yeah.
loading,
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
it
I
comes up with
love
the
it.
funny little,
Yeah.
instead of like or thinking or
Yeah.
loading, it'll say
Yeah.
like honking
Pontification.
or discombobulating or like whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And you're right,
Yeah.
like those are specific design decisions. And
Hmm.
I think
Right.
there's a fear that content designers have right now, and that it's content design is losing its way into engineering. And we held a webinar a couple of weeks ago with Ditto and a few others, and we talked about
Hmm.
what does it mean to treat content as data and how do you do that. And I think there's a balance right now because there's with these types of tools, you are going to be interacting more with engineering teams. And so you probably
Right.
do need to learn a little bit of the language that's being used there. But I really
Yeah.
like your story because it shows that even in the midst of all of those complex engineering tasks and workflows, there still needs to be someone who understands not this word, not this tone,
Right.
that tone, not this sentence structure,
Right.
this one. I'm 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 curious, like working on a tool like Grok, what was it like working with engineering teams? Did they have the respect for your control of words that way? Was it seen as something maybe secondary to the role, or something just like just sort of like a checkbox to get done? Because now everyone's working with language tools, what does that mean
Hmm.
for people who haven't worked with language before? Are they sort of respectful of the work that you're doing? I know this is just one company, but I'd love to hear that side of
Right.
it.
Yeah, I think that rather than answer the question using XAI, I would just say so. I've been consulting with several
Mhm.
companies, and I'm happy to talk about that
Sure.
even like more elaborately. I've been consulting with companies, and um, what I know now is that even engineers are like, and not just engineers, even AI researchers, engineers who are like AI researchers, and they're like thinking of the product as a product, as something that users have to like experience. Apart from the fact that it's able to do what it should do, how is it delivering what it is delivering, what it should deliver, what is, but I think that and I think the good a very good example is the way that um there's a blur between content designers and engineers at Anthropic. I love Chelsea's work so much, and the way that she sort of like tries to like bring content designers into the fold. um and it shows that there's an agency that content design now has in in AI as what's it called, as as its own niche. There's an agency that the need for us to scale that order of AI actually only like delivering with its own word what the response should be, into like designing intuitively or helping think about how an AI can actually, or an AI system can actually sort of like think of what should be an ideal response versus what should be the response.
Hmm.
The difference between what is ideal and what is just the response is what actually separates a properly optimized or a properly designed AI system from an AI system that actually just has the knowledge base and the RAG and the system. So working with engineering actually now is now interesting in such a way that more engineers are eager to actually hear what you think, what you have to say. And this has been actually like even evident since the time that I'd like worked at uh, Tech Mahindra to through Google. You are literally like interfacing with Google engineers directly on sprints, and you're like, they want to hear what you think of the data set and how you're sort of like, thinking of the word, or how many words should actually like an ideal answer constitute, or how long should it be, what is the attention span of the user for this particular kind of query, what very interesting
Mm.
questions would then help you start thinking about, so yeah, truly, what should be an ideal response, and what should be the ideal voice, what is the character of the for how do you even design for an agent that can be used in any way possible?
Mm.
How do you design the personality of an agent that is, first, it has like it's called Grok. However, in Grok, we have multiple personality. We have this guy called Valentine, an interesting guy. We have some other interesting. If you use the app, you probably understand what I'm talking about. So, like, how do you design for many of these personalities? And it's not just something that only engineering can actually. So you have to sort of like write micro copies that then you're mapping to ideal scenarios,
Yeah.
right? So if you get a response like this is how you think about it, and this is what you can do. Guide rails,
Yeah.
this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do. So it's then moves from. I think that when designing an AI agent or AI multi AI agents, uh, the most important thing is not just the what the agent can do,
Yeah.
but what the agent will do with what it has been given, and how it's delivering it. And soon, I think that many content designers were like skeptical, would actually soon start to realize that it's less about the whole technical whatever. No, it's not. It's just trying to like meet people and understand, meet people, like meet engineers like on, like, in the middle,
Yeah.
just try to like understand them better, so that you can actually like contribute even better. And that's how I think about it. But there's also something that I also wanted to mention that
Yeah.
I've been thinking about, that maybe it's actually time for us to, rather than treat, um, I think you mentioned something earlier. You said that they're treating content as data. Oh, sorry, treating data as content.
Yeah, content is data. So like the idea that
Yeah,
like how do
content.
you sort of like
Yeah,
systemize it and yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thinking of content as data, I think it's actually time that we actually also think of data as also like part of the content that we're designing.
Mm.
The fact that we can actually then, say, so there's this data set. And then you can actually like, part of the things that I'm interested in is, I think Jessica Talisman's work, where you're building for the knowledge base. You're thinking about how you design a knowledge base, how you sort of like, can link one. There's this website that I recently found. I think it's the Connected Papers, I think, where you actually can actually look for one paper, and then it can actually help you also like find similar papers that are talking about something in this paper that's referencing this, that's referencing this. So now, before you know it, it's of course AI powered, but before you know it, you already have like, because you're looking for the word African literature, you already have about 50 things that are linked to one another. And that's how the knowledge actually grows. And that's how the system actually works. So knowing that it's something that we then, for an ideal response, should contribute to, would help us understand that, yeah, maybe we actually like belong into the room. I don't think it's actually time for us to like feel, of course I am also very overwhelmed, but I don't think it's actually that time when we feel like, oh, this does not, it's not my thing, it's not my yard. I think it's actually time that we actually say and walk into the room and say, so yeah, I understand that we're like building for this, but now that it has to do with knowledge base and content itself, this data that we have, it's content, and we have to design it in such a way that it's actually useful for both the system and the user.
I think that's fantastic. I I think it's such an exciting time. Like I think that
Yeah,
the past. I think when these models started coming around, everyone was rightly worried, and there were a lot of layoffs around that time, not just in content design, but
right,
in engineering and software
right.
development and so on. Now I just
Hmm.
look at the number of companies that are hiring people right now and the types
Right.
of work that they're doing. I just think it's an exciting
Yeah,
time, that there's a lot going on
yeah,
and a lot of opportunity to engage in ways that we haven't had
right.
before. And I think treating
Yeah,
data as content is a
yeah,
good reverse view of what I mentioned before. Um, this has been
right.
fantastic. We've been nearly chatting for an hour, so this has just flown by.
Yeah,
I want
yeah,
to.
yeah.
I'm interested for. We're going to link to your blogs and everything so people can have a read. But for people who are
Right.
listening, who are maybe skeptical or overwhelmed, what would you say?
Right.
What advice do you have for getting engaged with the type of work that you're doing?
Uh, so honestly, it's still incredibly early,
Yeah,
and we're still all figuring this out. Nobody knows anything. I wish I could like use the word like words like nobody knows shit about this because, I'm not gonna say it because well, it's a podcast for content designers. So, but nobody knows shit about this. So we don't really know. We don't really know what comes tomorrow. We don't
yeah,
know if. But what we know is that this is something that we've always done. This is it's a very familiar terrain. It's something like if you look at it very well, it's the same way that you're designing for the user. Um, you say, let me see, Duolingo, the same way that you're sort of like designing the personality of Duolingo to respond to the user. It's the same way you would be designing for an AI agent native or an AI native app, say ChatGPT, to actually respond to the user. So it's very similar. It's like almost the same thing. Just now, we're now like designing for something that is able to think
mm,
for itself. So what we'll be designing technically is the way it's thinking, the way it's handing off, when it's actually sort of like, supposed to ask questions, when it's supposed to, how it's supposed to sound. If how do you how do you decide, or what decision actually goes into making a system or an AI agent that is actually technically only supposed to um, answer military related response or queries,
mm,
Uh, and then somebody's trying to like, have it say, uh, have it tell it a joke. Is it should a military AI bot tell a joke? This is very absurd example, but it's actually like helps to amplify design decisions that goes into thinking about the AI product.
yeah,
What can it do? What should it not do? What is the guide rail? What is the limit? And these are the things that we've always like designed. So
mm,
it's very early. It's something that we're all figuring out. It's something that we are all coming to terms with, and we're only understanding all of this because we were on the internet and reading papers. I like to read papers a lot because I think that that's actually like where I understand even better the capabilities of the AI product, or of the AI system, the structure. And it's gonna take a lot of like it like understanding a web structure,
yeah,
like a website structure, the skeleton of the website, the home page. That's the same way that AI agent actually is also like constructed. And I don't think anybody should be afraid of jumping into the water. You cannot drown, because technically what you're trying to do is to just think of how to be helpful, not just to the user, but I think the end goal is to be helpful to the user, but also contribute to how we are building a world where many of these systems, in a world where they are intuitive and can think on themselves, we're building a system that is safe for everybody to use,
mm,
that is we are stamping our feet on the ground that this is the capability that this product should be able to do, and this is knowing where it should stop. I mean, there are several things that we've heard about AI products and the things that they do, and you're like, no, nobody should design this. This is a feature that nobody should ever design, and these are like decisions that are not just before they get into like management decision or board decision. These are decisions that we even like are able to like decide from the ground up. What is the limit to this product? How am I writing the character, the personality? What is it supposed to do? What is the guide rail? What is the system prompt? What goes into the system prompt? What are the limits of the system prompt? How am I describing the agent itself? And it's creative writing, it's just like writing out characters. So it's
there
that,
you go. You brought it back to poetry. There you go.
It's creative writing.
Adedayo, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. I really appreciate it, and it's been illuminating and really helpful for me to listen to you, and inspiring. So thank you so much.
Patrick, this is actually like it's a golden time in my career to actually be speaking to you. I'm in awe of all the things that you do. I'm a very shy person, is why I've never I didn't like come to your LinkedIn to say, I'm a big fan. But I'm really, really grateful that we were talking. I'm grateful that you're open to hearing this thing that I'm really obsessed about, and it's just incredible. Thank you.
Bless you. And I didn't even pay him to say all those nice things. He just said that out of the goodness of his heart. Adedayo, this is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. That was my chat with Adedayo. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I learned a lot, and I think he has so many wise things to say about the industry and where we're at right now. As always, head to uxcontent.com, get 20% off with podcast 20. If you have any questions, concerns, email me at patrick@uxcontent.com, even just to say hello. And I'll see you all next time.